2 years. 2 years ago. The year 2017. Does that feel like a long time ago to you? Or did it pass by like that? Well, for me, it's a little bit of both. It was 2 years ago that I spoke for the very first time in front of a crowd like you at a facility management conference, and I was so nervous getting on that stage. But since then, I've had the opportunity to speak dozens of times to gatherings like this, both large and small, although this is my first time in Europe. So again, being on a stage like this is a little outside of my comfort zone, as the phrase goes. But that's okay, because my motto is, we all, in these fast-changing times, we must be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? As Chris said, I host a podcast called The Workplace Innovator. It's a weekly show, and I have conducted over 100 interviews with some amazing people, industry thought leaders from the world of facility management, corporate real estate, consultants, authors, and so forth. I've learned so much from my guests. It's an amazing privilege to do it. And I'm so excited when I have a chance to share some of those stories with folks like you. So very excited to be here today. And when I think back over these last 2 years, a lot has happened. It's been very busy since that very first conference speech, and it's certainly been busy putting out a weekly podcast. So it does seem like a long time ago, but at the same time, it feels like the blink of an eye, just like yesterday, since I started this whole thing. And I think it both can be true, and you'll find out why. Let's go back a little further in time. From 2017, take another decade back, and go back to the year 2007. What were you doing back in 2007? Do you remember? Was it similar to what you're doing now, or was it a lot different? Well, for me, the tools I use today to do my job are completely different. And to help you kind of put yourself in a frame of mind of what 2007 was like, I like to talk about music on my show. Anybody remember the #1 hit song in the summer of 2007? It was #1 here in Ireland. It was all over Europe, and it was even in the US. The #1 hit. Here's a clue. When it rains, Rihanna told us, "You can stand under my umbrella, Ella, Ella, under my umbrella." So we sing on this show, too. Really poorly, but it's a lot of fun. But doesn't it feel like yesterday we were all singing that song? That was 12 years ago, folks. 12 years have gone by since then. You know what else was released besides that single in the summer of 2007? The very first iPhone from Apple. And our world changed forever, didn't it? This little device has changed our lives in so many ways. Can you imagine your life without it today? I sure can't. It's a super powerful device, too. Do you know how many sensors are in this little supercomputer? Do you know? Do you? Because I don't. I was hoping one of you guys knew. I bet it's a lot. No, seriously. I've read between 14 and 24 unique sensors in just this little device that has revolutionized our world. So it's a revolutionary technology. And that's what we talk about on the show. People often ask, is there a common theme? Is there something that your guests would agree is the overall trend in the workplace and the world of facility management today? And I think that's it. Technology, the advancement of technology. We are truly living in an age of acceleration. Things are moving faster than they ever have been, and technology is disrupting our world. In fact, one of my guests said this. They said, "We will never live in a time that is moving faster than it is right now." No. Let me check that. You know what's great on the podcast? I would have edited that out. Let me say this again. Never before have we lived in a time in history where things are moving as fast as they are today. But at the same time, never again will things move as slowly as they are today. Does that make sense? Cut that, put that in. We're all good. Well, this is Laurie Rowlandson. She's been the guest on my show a couple of times, and I just think she is amazing. She is the Senior Vice President of Innovation and Strategy for BGIS in Toronto, Canada. It's a Canadian-based real estate and facility management company. And we've talked about all these disruptive forces happening to the world of facility management. Things we've talked about already today, things like AI, machine learning, automation, Internet of Things. But it's not just that, it's the cultural changes, it's the generational shifts. So many things are disrupting our world. And I asked Laurie, and I asked many of my guests, what do you think that thing 10 years into the future will be that we look back on and say, back in 2019, that was a revolutionary change? Would it be a technology, a software, maybe a trend? Maybe it's co-working, the space as a service model that's disrupting the world of real estate, how we manage and own buildings. It's amazing what's going on today. I don't know what the future holds. Laurie didn't have all the answers, but it's an interesting thing to think about because 10 years from now, we're going to be looking back on 2019 like we did back on 2007 and say, well, that was just a decade ago. Went by like that. Well, how did I get here, you ask? I am from Washington, D.C., so I send greetings from the United States Capitol, and I feel like I need to address something here. I don't want to be controversial, but it's important because I am from America's capital city that I talk about something because it's personal to me. It upsets me sometimes. I think our society is becoming very polarized, isn't it? You're either on this side or you're on that side. Everything is either red or it's blue. And I'm talking about, of course, lightsabers. The debate over Star Wars. Is this the new Lucasfilm owned by Disney, the direction you want our franchise to go? Or is this not your Star Wars? This isn't the Luke Skywalker I remember from my childhood. It's very controversial. Oh, did you think I was going to talk about something else? No. We do not discuss politics on the program because I've lived in Washington most of my adult life. I've tried to look at politicians and understand politics. I've tried to break down the word. Poly, meaning many. Ticks, meaning blood-sucking insects. It's hard to understand, so we don't go there. But we do talk about issues that can be considered controversial, things in the workplace, in the built environment, things like the open office plan, things like generational issues, culture changes, technology, data, privacy. All of these things can stir up emotions in us and the occupants of our facilities. They may get upset, take a position, take one of those two sides, and then dig in and be very polarized about it. So we have to, as FM leaders, help navigate these fast-changing times. I asked how we do that. I asked Neil Usher how we do that. Neil, based in London, is a longtime FM practitioner, but he's now a consultant and a book author. He wrote the book, The Elemental Workplace, where he describes all of the elements that make a workplace fantastic, because everyone deserves a wonderful place to work, according to Neil. And we also discussed music, punk rock music specifically. Did it start in London, where Neil is, or did it start in New York City, back in the USA? And you'll have to listen to episode 39 to find out what we decided. But we did agree that as workplace and FM leaders, we need to embrace the spirit of punk. We want to embrace a spirit of experimentation, of taking a risk, trying something new. And yes, we may fail, we may fall, and we may disrupt some people, upset some people. But again, we all must be comfortable being uncomfortable as we navigate this fast-changing world. And Neil says the best way to do that is be excellent to each other. Great wisdom from Bill and Ted and their 1989 movie. Kind of a surprise that he would quote that, but wouldn't that be great? When we get into these debates, instead of being so polarized, have a more respectful dialogue and be excellent to each other. Well, I often ask my guests to share a motivational quote to inspire us on our FM adventure. This is Portia Parker from Atlanta, Georgia. She is the founder of the Millennial Performance Institute, and Portia is an expert on those generational issues. You know, she wants to talk about how we can better work together, 5 generations in the workplace today. And she shared a quote from a past US president. It's actually an old quote, but it's so relevant today. She said, Theodore Roosevelt said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And isn't that true? When we look at social media in our personal lives, we look across at a friend or a family member's social media profile, and their life is perfect. They've got it all together. They don't have any problems. They don't have the real-world concerns that we have, do they? Well, it's such a filtered view. It's so unfair to think of it that way because it's a fictional view of their world. We all struggle with things. We all have problems. And if we compare ourselves to others, it may steal our joy in life. We don't want to do that. So, I have spoken at a lot of conferences, and I have talked to a lot of leaders, and there's a lot of buzzwords that come out. Things like 2 years ago, collaboration was the big topic. Maybe last year, experience was the big topic. All important issues, and we continue to talk about them. But my favorite word of 2019 is paradox. Paradox meaning a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement. Because one week on the show, I'll have a guest shares this incredible point, they say something really important, I'm like, that's really true. And then the next week, another guest comes on and seems to say the exact opposite. And it's like, these both can't be true, can they? But maybe they can. Here are a couple examples. Buildings are totally different today than they ever have been. They're smart. They have automated systems. It's an incredible new world of building and construction. Buildings are just 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. It's really a 6-sided box. We haven't really changed all that much. Well, depending on your perspective, both may be true. How about this one? We are living in, what was the next best example? Again, editing the podcast is so much easier than speaking live. But how about this example? We are the most connected we've ever been. Technology is allowed, the most connected we've ever been. And then another guest would say, people in this generation, because of technology, are the most isolated we've ever been as people. And isn't that true? We face a mental health crisis because of the isolation. Both are true, though. So with that said, I like to refer to another podcast, not my own, called Freakonomics Radio. And I really encourage you to Google a particular episode where Stephen Dubner and his guests talk about the hidden side of everything. That's their tagline. There's an episode that you could Google called In Praise of Maintenance. And you say, Mike, you're an innovation podcast host. Why would you talk about maintenance? The episode's all about innovation versus maintenance. And the paradox is we do talk about innovation, and we try to put all out of money and funds into moving things forward and progressing, which is very important. But if we ignore our existing facilities and infrastructure, we'll never succeed with the innovation. So both need to be cared for, and there needs to be a balanced approach. So I agree with the folks at Freakonomics. Here's one last paradoxical thought. I interviewed the UK-based innovation writer, A.D. Gaskell, and in the show we were talking about change and human beings, and I threw out my standard line. I said, A.D., people hate change. People are always going to resist your effort to change things in the workplace. And A.D. said, well, that may be true if you look at it from the short term, but if you take a broader perspective, step back and think about, instead of months and years, think about hundreds of years or even thousands of years. Human beings are great at change. We're the best at it. Another paradox. Meet Christina Herrera. This is one of my favorite, most inspirational stories. Chris was born and raised in Australia, and about 5 years ago, she applied for and won the green card lottery. And within a couple of months of that, she got in a plane and moved from Sydney to New York City all by herself. And she started a career there. And today, she is the Director of Change Management for Ted Moodis Associates. And she is so excited and passionate about the workplace and the opportunity we have as FM leaders to turn this thing that was once considered a liability on a balance sheet into a tool, something that can be used to attract and retain talent, something that can drive revenue for an organization. It's such a different world. But it's hard. It is hard to change in the short term, and here's a quote that sums that up. Change is hard because people overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they may gain by giving that up. Isn't that true? We always in our minds imagining that it's going to be worse if we change. So how do we do it? My friend Kate North, she is the Managing Director of Workplace Innovation for Colliers International in Chicago. She's also the Global Chair of the Workplace Evolutionaries community, and she talks about how we change, and she quoted one of the great quotes from, often attributed to Gandhi, and Chris alluded to it as well. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. Well, that's hard. It's not always that easy. As human beings, we worry about failing, and we worry about trying things and not succeeding, don't we? So I hope you know that you're not the only one who feels that way. because I came to Ireland, and anybody who listens to my show knows that Dublin is the hometown of the greatest rock and roll band of all time. I'm talking about, of course, U2. And Bono and the boys, if anyone, being rich and famous at this stage in their career, they should have no worries. They should have no anxiety about the world and change. They should be living a carefree life, right? Well, on their most recent album, called Songs of Experience, Bono sings, "Sometimes I can't believe my existence. I see myself from a distance. I can't get back inside. Sometimes the air is so anxious. All my thoughts are so reckless. And all my innocence has died." And this is the part I can really relate to. "Sometimes I wake at 4 in the morning when all the darkness is swarming, and it covers me in fear. Sometimes. Hey, thanks for the echo effect. That's pretty cool. But isn't that true? You ever wake up at 4 in the morning and your brain starts going, and you think about your day and all you've got going on at work, and all the troubles in your personal life, and all the things you can't control, and it's fearful? Well, I hope you leave here this week after this conference, and remember you're not alone. We all are human beings. We all experience those fears, those worries, those anxieties. None of us have it all together. Social media lies. We all can help each other as we go back to our workplaces, and it's an exciting time to be an FM professional. You have an opportunity to have an impact on the built environment like never before. And as I say at the end of my podcast each week, I hope that you've been encouraged, and in some small way, I have inspired you to be a workplace innovator. Peace out.